prices every minute of every day like it's some kind of a game or something to watch, you will drive yourself absolutely crazy.
Well, it's definitely long term, yeah.
Yeah. And cost average. I mean, that's another thing I get asked all the time is, how do I know when to buy? How do I know when to sell? What's a good price? Is it up or down? You have to know your cost average. If you have a cost average in place, if you can buy with the premium cheaper than what your cost average is, you are now bringing down your cost average. So it only makes sense to buy in that time to me. Similarly, on the opposite end of things, unless you're just a forever stacker, if you want to take a little profit every once in a while, like the big boys do in these hedge funds and banks and whatnot, when the price goes up enough to where you can make a little profit, you think it's going to go back down to where you can buy back again later and keep on stacking, why wouldn't you? To me, the cost average, unless you're buying something specifically for a long-term rare investment, on its own, cost average is where you need to be. You need to have some kind of basis to know where you stand.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're selling a large amount, you don't know where you stand. I mean, you could be subject to all kinds of a tax liability.
Right, yeah, true.
That's a whole nother issue.
So we were on the numismatics for a second, and why do you think it is that the UK, Australia, Canada have all these beautiful coins that they come out with, tons of beautiful coins every year, and the United States government comes out with eagle, a little flowing hair, a little Morgan,
Buffalo, a couple of Commons, and that's it.
Yeah, nothing really numismatic.
I feel like you're going to see that change. For many, many years now, I've been squawking behind the scenes, and to whoever would listen, about privy marks, especially from Canada and Perth Mint, the multiple versions of a maple leaf, so to speak.
Right.
And I said, I predicted it. You're going to see the U.S. do this eventually.
Mm-hmm.
How do you sell, especially if you have a basic product that everybody knows and trusts and loves and whatnot? How do you sell them more? Well, when you start putting a privy mark, now you have 5 different versions of the same thing. So now, like say with Canada, you may have to buy 4 to 6 per year instead of the 1.
Right.
So it's the V75 started that out, and that got everybody addicted, and they made them in super low mintage. That got everybody hyped up about it, saying, "Oh, we need to, look at this next time around. Oh my, oh my, oh my." Well, now they're introducing this star, on the new one.
I'm glad you brought that.
People are already speculating about buying it out and all this, and it's going to run. And I mean, apparently it's already running off the pages price-wise.
I was a sucker. I bought it.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If you can buy it on an initial offering like that,
yeah,
you just have to be able to ride the wave of the eBay effect and then let's rise back up. But typically long term, something lower mintage is always going to be better than a mass-produced product.
Mm-hmm.
Supply and demand, always, always, always.
Well, I saw what happened with the 230 privy. They, $104, you had a 2.5% chance of getting a 230 privy.
You'll see people go and buy these pieces, the very limited edition pieces, and they will not even list the piece. It will be a month or 2 out, from shipping to them, and they will list a confirmation number on eBay to sell it and run the price into the stratosphere. So it will be sold for a huge profit before they ever even receive it in their hands. Anything limited is going to have a supply and demand bottleneck, and there are going to be a lot of people out there trying to take advantage of that before it goes away.
Right. And we're in a little bit of a mania right now.
Very much so. Very much so.
What do you think is going to happen after the election, though? You think the election is going to mellow things out, steady things out, or you think it's depends on who wins, I guess? But
I mean, it's anybody's guess at this point, but I think we see more volatility. I think we have bigger foundational problems that are not going to be solved in the next 4 years. We are printing money out of control in this country, and to me, that is the biggest reason ever to buy gold and silver.
yeah.
I teach the story of the silver quarter to my customers in here, and I'll give you a very simplified, quick version of it. But essentially, a gallon of gas in 1964 being the last year that silver ran as, full silver ran as change in the United States, dimes, quarters, and half dollars. That quarter could buy you about a gallon of gas, depending on where you were in the U.S. Fast forward 60 some odd years, right before the COVID shutdowns, those silver quarters were trading between $2 and $3, or after 60 some odd years, still a gallon of gas.
Right.
So, and then, obviously do the math to today, and it's still correlative, basically still correlates. If you had put a $100 bill under your pillow in the 60s and 64, today you could still take it to the bank or go over to Publix and, buy groceries with it. But your cart or your little bag would probably look like $10 compared to what 100 looked like
Right.
back in '64. If you had put $100 in silver quarters under your pillow or in a bag in the back of the closet, today you'd be cashing in with me at somewhere around $2,400 for that same 100 in silver quarters, which I would venture to say 23 or 2,400 would buy a lot more groceries than today and than 100 did back in '64.
Right, so that indicates that silver has actually outpaced inflation.
I see that as a net gain over time for certain.
What would you recommend a brand new stacker starts out with?
Cheap and easy. Easier to transact and easier to replace. To most people just starting out, it's going to be same as cash and like a little bit of a savings plan. And especially if you're starting off on a really tight budget, you may need to dip into it from time to time for an emergency. Highly recommend you don't buy something really rare, but I recommend generic ounces. You have three groups of standard 1 troy ounce on gold and silver: US, foreign government, and then what we call generics are really just private corporation or private company, private refinery, not denominated in any country's currency or legal tender. But that seems to be the biggest bang for your buck. On the gold side, well, silver and gold both, the US Mint may not like me for saying this, but they're a little expensive both ways, especially for something that's not shipping overseas. How these other governments are able to ship into our markets and pay, import taxes and all this stuff and still sell for cheaper than the US Eagle baffles me.
Right.
But that being said, gold side, definitely recommend the foreign government. A little bit cheaper than the US, but a little more trusted than the generic.
And does it still pay the same when people come to trade it in? Or?
Roughly. I mean, you're talking about a $15 to $20 spread.
Yeah.
Less than 1% in most cases. Yeah.
And you could probably save 2-3% on the other side.
Oh yeah, on the purchase price. Yeah. I don't think on the silver side that you necessarily have to have the trust factor of a government behind it at all with that kind of price point. I just don't see it justified at all. And to me, I tell a lot of my customers, for every 10 or so ounces, 10 or 11 ounces you buy, when you buy a generic, you're essentially getting an ounce for free versus the other categories.
Right.
So to me, cost averaging there matters.
Yeah.
The only other thing I would recommend outside of that, other than generic ounces on the silver side, would be 90% silver, the old dimes, quarters, and halves. They seem to be the only way that you can buy a fractional amount of silver, which would, if we go to a zero sum out here someday, maybe used to make small change and divide up, like the small change in a cash transaction. But when you have those old dimes, quarters, and halves, that may be a little necessary thing if we ever go to a zero sum situation.
Right. And they're trusted, they're known.
Yeah, very known, very trusted. Most of the issues are well known in the United States anyway, and trusted mostly around the world from most of the professionals around the world anyway. I think you would see the general public catch up on that real fast also. But I definitely recommend most people have a little bit of 90%.
So somebody new, you would definitely recommend obviously starting with silver.
I think
which
silver,
most people do.
I think silver is the best way to go. Initially, it seems to have the most upside potential, best price point, best entry level point, just accepted everywhere.
Right.
And
the one negative I would say with silver is storage, right? So once you start bulking up, you get a little bit of, you get over 1,000 ounces or so, that's...
Some of the wealthier clients that we deal with have raised that to me for a couple of years now. One in particular makes the joke, how am I going to run in the middle of the night with 600 pounds of silver on my back?
Right.
And he's like 78. So, but I mean, I guess you don't. So, I think if you are actually worried about running in the middle of the night, gold is a better option for you.
No doubt.
Okay? I mean, let's be real. Most of the people fleeing South Africa back in the 70s and 80s were not carrying silver.
Right.
They were carrying gold Krugerrands, and very hastily.
Yeah, I did a video of that where I put 8,000 in silver on the table and 8,000 in gold.
Yeah.
The gold you could fit in a bottle cap,
I just for kind of grins the other day, just to show some of these guys that have not been around the industry as long as others, I carried them back 100 ounces of gold and put it in the palm of their hand and said to them, is this the first time you've ever had $250,000 in the palms of your hand? And every single one of them answered yes.
Yeah. No, it's true. You can fit 100,000 in gold easily in your pocket.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I guess we're gonna wrap it up here. This is the first
highlight pieces.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Let's do that. Okay. So we're back. I just want to highlight a few things quickly that are on my wish list, and just to kind of give you an idea of what OJ has. So these 3 items here are things I wish I could walk out with right now, but that ain't gonna happen. So can you show me what we got here?
Well, we'll do layaway for you.
Okay.
So what we have here are old and new versions of Engelhard 10-ounce silver bars. We call this one new, but it's probably got 30 plus years on it anyhow, but you can see how far they've come over the years. And these, even with such different shapes, are the exact same weight. You can see the thickness difference there spreads out to equal the same amount of overall weight. So 10-ounce Engelhard's there.
And then, of course, the Carson City, that's big time on my
This is a
wish list.
favorite. This is kind of a common date for Carson City, especially in a GSA holder. This is an
GSA,
1884, but these guys ran 1878 to 1893, mostly produced in Carson City.
All right. Well, listen, man, I appreciate you giving up your time like this.
Thanks, glad to do it.
Introduce you to the people.
Appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Joe. Appreciate you.
Till the next time. All right, special thanks to OJ for giving us this interview. Thank you, OJ's Coin. We really appreciate you guys. Average Joe, out.